Please remember to keep your microphone muted during the duration of the presentation, and there'll be time for live Q&A at the conclusion of today's lecture. But I will hand it over to Lisa.
Thanks, Danielle. Welcome, everyone. This is our final MFA noontime lecture of the semester featuring Margaret Simic. We're also really thrilled to have some special guests with us today in the audience. So I'm going to turn it over to Gail Hodges. Gail Hodges is a really special friend and collaborator of our department, and she is also the chair of our Fiber and Material Studies Council. So welcome, Gail. Glad you could be with us, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. It's nice to see you there, and I'm excited to know who's in the audience. Maybe we'll figure that out, but it's, you know, it's very, I feel very bereft that we can't have, again, for the second year in a row, have our spring meeting and tour of MFA show with our graduate students. It's always been a very special occasion, and so I'm so proud of the ones that have shown their work so far. Can hardly wait to get down there and hopefully see it myself. We appreciate everyone's continued attention and support. The Fiber Council is strong, and we're just so happy that we can continue our work with the very finest graduate students ever. So thank you and congratulations to all.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gail. Thank you all the members of the Fiber Council who are here today. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Danielle Andress, and I'm the graduate coordinator for the Fiber and Material Studies Department. And I'll be introducing Margaret today. So as mentioned, please make sure that your microphone stays muted until the end. Also, today's recording, I believe Margaret is going to be recording it. So I asked, unless you want your image recorded, to please also turn off the camera during the presentation. And again, we encourage you to join us at the sort of on the other side of today's lecture. Margaret Simic is a raised artist in the Fiber and Material Studies MFA program. She is currently residing in Chicago after receiving her BFA at the University of Kentucky. Her works involve themes of prison abolition, politics in Louisville and Chicago, and capitalism and how it causes inequities in wealth from the perspective of a child of an incarcerated parent. She uses embellishment to draw attention to monumental moments, conversations, and policies that shape incarceration and imperialism in Louisville and in the communities affected most by incarceration and poverty. Beads act as a medium representing excessive wealth and decoration in her works to embellish materials associated with the working class, criminality, and poverty. Education is a primary goal of Margaret's work, achieved by recontextualizing and documenting politically charged events and phenomena through well-known objects, creating a heightened sense of awareness. Her use of digital media, including infographics and video games, work as a storytelling method, as well as a way of presenting data in a way that directly involves the viewer's interaction. Margaret, thank you for the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you everyone for being here, especially during Critique Week, for those participating in any of those activities. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for you all. So my name is Margaret Simic. I am in the Graduate Fibers and Material Studies program here at SAIC. I was actually born in Illinois, so it's kind of like full circle coming back here. But I was raised in Louisville, Kentucky by my mom and with my 3 other siblings. We moved there when I was 3 after my father was incarcerated, and my life and the experiences that I had after those as a consequence to that experience really shaped my art and my perspective. And yeah, I kind of want to present that to you all today and explain how my research has led me to develop new ideas and themes in my work that pertain to some of these outside objects and ideas. So at a young age, I had created this understanding of what rich was and what poor was, but I didn't quite have the understanding of what wealth was and how it was accessed. And then I kind of was also aware of these differences, but I couldn't understand the systems that led to these differences. And so I kind of started to strongly correlate materials with wealth. And I think that really manifested in my artwork. My use of bees has always been utilized to insert this conversation of wealth into whatever art piece I'm making. The presence of bead and bead weaving and bead embroidery also work as an ornament, which is defined as usually having no practical value or purpose. And so I feel like that expresses this connection between wealth and the ornament, using these materials to represent that. This also speaks to labor. The amount of time that goes into beadwork always has this reference to labor and the exploitation of labor, but also this flawed perception that wealth can only be acquired by extreme labor. So I also find it important to recognize the power associated with wealth in my work. So I wanted to, in some way, monument political moments that were happening around me in Louisville growing up, and then as I grew older and changed locations, where people in power were weaponizing wealth and using it against the working class and other oppressed groups. So I started a series back in 2018 at the University of Kentucky, where I was using objects that were associated with the working class.
Maggie?
Yeah.
I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I'm seeing a toolbar on these slides that wasn't there when we did the tech run through. I'm seeing it on the right-hand side. Is anybody, there we go. And there's also something in the center, like a black horizontal line.
I'm confused. I wonder.
There, it's gone.
Okay,
Perfect.
is everything gone?
It's gone. It looks great. Thank you.
I'm sorry about that, everybody. So yes, this is just the two pieces that I created back in my undergraduate program, but it is a series that I started where I was taking these objects that were representative of the working class, and I was recontextualizing them and embellishing them to kind of bring attention and monument some of these moments and policies that I was seeing happening, especially the ones, like I said, that weaponize wealth against the targeted communities. And as I went through school, I finished and I came here to SAIC, and I started this piece, which is the last piece of the series. It is called Fire, Fire, Gentrifier. This piece was made as a response to a moment in protest history here, or in Louisville, where Greg Fisher our mayor, was actually opening a new housing development project, and a group of protesters came behind him with signs and started chanting "Fire, Fire, Gentrifier" until he walked off the podium. They weren't only protesting the gentrification project, but they were responding to Fisher's silence on claims that the Elliott Avenue housing project or development was connected to Breonna Taylor's murder. And so I wanted to represent this moment and the weaponization of wealth against communities, and doing that through working class objects, and then also combining those with objects that I feel represent wealth and excessive wealth and greed. On the reversal side, I found that the words fire, fire, gentrifier held so much value, and I also wanted to kind of ornament those actual words and the power that they had in order to move someone from their position. And I wanted to monument that and create this series and finish that off. And then from this piece, I was beginning to come into my surroundings and understand where I was in Chicago and trying to react to that environment. So from this piece, I started creating the rug. This is a large piece, about 11 feet long and 6 feet wide, and it is made of cigarillo packets, which, for those who don't know, those are the wraps that would be used for marijuana, and these were all collected throughout my life with friends and everything like that. And so when I moved to Chicago, one of the main things that I had recognized, being someone that had, you know, indulged in these activities, I was, aware of the fact that it was legal here, and I started to consider what that meant exactly, and how that was going to change so many things, especially after seeing so many people around me be arrested for marijuana, and so many consequences come from that. I was interested and I wanted to look into it, and I guess whenever I started researching, I had realized that not much has changed in regards to decarceration and the anti-prison movement, as much so as maybe this sort of decriminalization of weed and a rearrangement of rules. So I guess I started to realize that this legalization movement was more so for profit of the state rather than for the decarceration movement and for the betterment of the crisis that is mass incarceration. And I really enjoyed making this piece and using objects that had this inevitable carcerality tied to them, and reinventing them in the same ways that these other people had done, where they had taken something that they had once criminalized someone for and then made a profit from it. And then it was in making this piece that I was really interested in kind of understanding that research a little bit more. And I had this shift here at SAIC where I really wanted to develop pieces that not only had this data visualization in terms of a conclusion, but also in terms of the research that actually went into it. And I started, with the help of some advisors here, I was able to start looking into infographics, studying those some, and trying to do some on my own. So here's some more details of the rug. Like I said, I used beads, and I just wanted to make this rug, which I had felt correlated with wealth. It was another object that was a material object growing up that I had always considered to be that of ornament and not of actual function in most cases, especially in those houses that I deemed to be wealthy. And so with this piece, I decided to look into infographics. And then this is a piece that I actually have on my website, so I'm going to bring you there. This is the first of 2 infographics built to show the visual discrepancies between legal weed and not legal weed between states. So what I was doing here was actually going between each state and finding their laws and making a comparison. And so here I have these little representations of what I would call a gram. It would be equal to a weight of 1 gram of beads. So I imagine these being bead patches. So basically at 30 grams, you can see that you would serve more time in Kentucky, but as you get up to 100 grams to almost 8 ounces, you are actually serving more time in Illinois. And this was something I found it to be particularly interesting about this research, was just kind of the way that you would kind of assume that the laws would be applied based on legalities, but it actually seems like you would have looser sentencing in Kentucky on a first offense, of course. And so this was something I really wanted to document and specify when making the rug, and that kind of led to this piece. But another important part of the rug was the idea of profit and who was actually profiting from this, and especially when there was such like a year ago, 2 years ago, there was such a hate and criminalization for this material, and now it's the crop of the state. So I created this in order to show that it is also on the same website. And so what you do is you go down and there'll be a list of all of the dispensaries here in Illinois that I was able to find the CEOs of and their correlating pictures. So this is 18 different dispensaries. And what you do is just click on each one and you are able to have a visual representation of all of the owners here in Illinois and in Chicago specifically. So I thought that these images together were very jarring, and especially when you juxtapose this against the comparison of the statistic that Black people are 7 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana than white people in Illinois. It is very clear that the initiatives that dispensaries have claimed to, or that the state has claimed to put in place so that underprivileged people or people that were affected by the war on drugs or in communities affected by the war on drugs would be able to have more of a chance to get in these licenses and be able to own these dispensaries. It is obvious that these initiatives aren't actually either being executed or aren't actually working. And that was a fact that I thought was really interesting to the conversation of marijuana and drugs and legality versus illegality, and what it exactly means to make something legal versus to decarcerate those that have been in prison for something that is now profitable. And I really enjoyed making these infographics, but I decided that I wanted something to be a little more tactile. So I plan to further these projects by involving some of my own visual language into them, and maybe if that is material-wise or imagery-wise, I want to include something more of my own hand into this, and be able to involve the viewer more and allow them to have not only a perspective but an emotion when leaving these pieces, and also some education about what exactly it is that they're participating in sometimes. Oops, sorry. Okay. So coming to SAIC, like I said, I've been kind of directed in this path towards art and tech, and I really loved it. I really want to embrace it and, try to figure out how I can meld these two practices together. But there are some things that I really enjoy about the two of them, even though they are so different. They both have this capability to embellish. With coding, you can go so far and make crazy things. And that's what I wanted to experiment with, but also I really enjoyed the storytelling aspect of video games and the power that they could hold, especially the assumed power that they have, like when you think about studies done to prove that violence is connected to video games. There's this assumed connection between psychology and these video games in our culture, and I think it'd be great to find a way to make those educational in a way that's not providing facts but yet providing emotions and feelings. So the game Homework was something that I have been creating. It's not finished yet, but it is getting to the finishing stages, so I hope to have this on my website by the end of next week if you all would love to play it. So this game is kind of discussing what differences are presented between the different socioeconomic classes, and especially how that affects childhood development and in early education, what it means to have these differences and go through the day with them. So I wanted to create a level difficulty selector where you could either choose easy or you could choose hard, and the easy would be those with the more privileged socioeconomic status, whereas hard would be the opposite. And the point is just to be able to understand that, children, they don't have necessarily the theory of mind at an early education, age, so they may not understand what other children are going through, but this game would hopefully be allowed to allow you to see the different paths that some may have to take to get to the same destination. Because at the end of the game, it is all the same levels, it is all the same storyline. It is just a different dialogue and a couple different themes presented in the games, but they're the same chapters, and you play either easy or hard, and you can change your level selector throughout the game if you wanted to. So I have here, let me mute this, sorry. So this is just like an opening clip to chapter 1. Like I said, they have the same opening scenes. It is just a difference in game. So for the chapter 1, it is about waking up and getting to school. In the easy level, the child lives really close to their home school and their parents take them. They don't have to wake up until about 7 a.m., which is pretty great. And then in the hard level, the child lives far from their school and they have to take 2 buses in order to get there, and so they have to wake up about 45 minutes to an hour earlier than in the easy level. So in the easy level, you're just pressing off the alarm, whereas the hard, you're fighting the sleepies and trying to wake up. And it's this dialogue of the difficulty that it is to wake up, even if the game itself is not more difficult or more fun than the other. It is just a different challenge. In the second chapter, it is about schooling and the materials, especially required materials, not being provided from schools, and how that can affect child's learning and then also their self-esteem. Like I remember myself going to take an ACT and I didn't have one of these TI-84 calculators that are like $100, and if you don't have one, they can't lend you one and you have to take the test without it, and it lowers your score, of course. So in this particular level, you would be using the calculator to help you with the math equation, or you would have to solve it in your head. So it's the same game, but just the utilities that you are able to use. And then the last chapter that is being developed is a lunchroom game. So it is about lunch shaming and the difficulties of that as a child. So basically lunch shaming is kind of this idea. So a child may go through a lunch line if they get everything that they want in their hot lunch, and then they get to the lunch lady at the end and she tells them that their balance is empty or too low to get the hot lunch. They give you this like consolation lunch, and it's like a slice of cheese and a couple crackers and maybe an apple if they have them, and it's like the most embarrassing thing that a child can do. It's so awkward to eat that in front of everybody else after they saw you get that lunch. And it's something that children really don't have to go through. It is just something that happens. So in this level in particular, the hard level would be a choice game where you're actually choosing what you want to eat, and then at the end of the level is when the lunch lady would take your lunch and switch the lunch out for the consolation lunch. And then in the hard level, it would be a different game where you're kind of trading food among friends and having a better time at lunch. But at the end of the game, both of the children are going to be presented with awards, and they're the same awards, but in the hard level, you will be acknowledged for some of the different challenges that you went through. And it's kind of just about acknowledging, like, at the young age, this development and this kind of understanding of wealth that children sometimes have to have and that other children don't have, and how that can affect childhood self-esteem. But I wanted to make it something that you could participate in and not something that you could just read about or talk about. And I thought games were very childlike and it fit with that theme. And so, yeah, I guess I'm really enjoying coding and everything that it's teaching me. So I'm going to continue in this direction. But like I said, I want to further get that part of my practice melded with fibers, and I hope that I can figure out how to do that soon. but I really enjoy the aspect of embellishment and how far you can take a game to do whatever you want. I've been using Unity for these projects as well as the infographics, but I'm enrolled in some courses to hopefully learn more types of coding language, and we'll see where that takes me. The infographics that I wanted to create based off of the other ones I had presented, I was hoping to use things like Arduino to create these interactive pieces and present them in a gallery. I feel like the most important aspects of my work are education and involvement, and I feel motivated to create work that pertains to themes that I experience in my own life with the intentions of understanding power as it exists in whatever environment I'm currently in. I like to counter the idea that embellishment is unnecessary by utilizing it to further ornament objects that would otherwise be seen as fleeting, and also to intervene the conversation of wealth into my work. To embellish statistics to me is a way to document data and a different form of data visualizations than my infographics. And I will continue to work through these opposing practices and work to get them together, and I'm excited for the new form that it'll take my work. But that is all that I have to present for you all today. I thank you all so much for your interest in my practice. And if you all have any questions or would like to refer back to any work, please let me know. I would love to speak with you all for the time we have left. And thank you all so much for your attention today.
Congratulations, Margaret, on your work. That's amazing.
Thank you very much.
I just, anyway, I think it's absolutely fascinating how you've combined your beading with and then, I guess you'd call all this stuff, the electronic stuff, all these little pixels that you're putting together and working with it in a different way. So I will look forward to seeing where you go in the next several months. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Well done. I don't know, you can leave the screen share up. Yes. You can also exit if you want, whatever feels good for you. There we are. So we're sort of more in a conversational setting now. But I invite everyone to turn your cameras back on if you're comfortable. And we have time for a live Q&A. Alternatively, if you want to enter any questions, you can use the chat function at the bottom of the screen and enter your questions into the text field, and then I would be happy to read that off to Margaret. I do have a question, and I apologize if you mentioned this in the presentation, but I noticed that in the video game, that Nikki is living in 2004.
Yes. That was the age that my last name was changed back to Simic. So Mickey is Simicky, I guess you could say. That was just a symbolic time in my life. I feel like that's when I realized a lot of things happening around me that I hadn't been so aware of at a younger age, not that I was that much older. So and all of those things, like there's a couple little Easter eggs, like the pink and zebra print, that was such a phase of my life at that age. I doodled it in every notebook. And there's Lisa Frank stickers hidden in the game, things like that I wanted to kind of represent the experience that I felt, because I can't necessarily speak to the technology that exists today and what, differences would be made.
Yeah, I think that, the peppering of sort of specific autobiographical moments like that, really makes the video game sort of potent in a really authentic way.
Thank you.
Hi Maggie,
Hi,
how are
Sophia.
you?
I'm good. It's great to hear you.
It's so incredible to see everything you've been making and thinking, and I love the video game.
Thank you.
I have a where do you think of placing this video game? Is it gonna
Yes.
live in your website, or are you gonna share it with kids?
Yeah, it's definitely as of right now, I would love to put it on my website so it's playable and accessible, but I do have plans to somehow make this either a disc that can be played or something that can be distributed, but also something that could be played in a gallery in a setting of maybe a couple people. I would love to see people interact with the work in person, but even alone, I love the scale that digital art has in distribution wise, and I just want to utilize that for sure with the website.
Yes,
Yes.
that sounds so exciting. I'm excited to see it in person. And the fire hydrant, how did I remember you were having a hard time finding it. How did
Yes.
you find it?
Well, real fire hydrants, I'm going to tell on myself. My other pieces are found objects, but the real fire hydrants are like tons of pounds and they're very top heavy and they're actually connected with a large pipe that goes into the ground. So they're unfindable. This is a doggy trainer hydrant. So, but it works with the same.
Hi, Margaret. My name is Nia. I'm
Hi.
faculty in fiber material studies. Sorry, I'm just getting a call right now. I love your work.
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Like, congratulations. Thank
Thank
you for this
you.
talk. I just wanted to mention that every year or so, there's been a video game, like SAI student video
Mm-hmm.
game sort of demo that's happened.
Ooh,
And maybe you could connect with some of the ATS people who put that on and
yeah,
have it like tested out in real time at school.
that'd be great.
Um, yeah, there's no real question there.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I appreciate that. I'll get in touch. Yeah, thank you.
Hey Maggie, thanks so much for your talk. It's like so great to see the direction that your work has gone into. For those of you who don't know, Maggie and I worked together last semester. I have a question, really. I'm interested in your research,
Yes.
because it's really meticulous. And I know that sometimes the data that you're using is deliberately obscure and hard to find. So can you tell us just a little bit more about your research practice and where you're sourcing the information? And is it difficult to find?
Yes. In most cases, it's very difficult to find. I kind of start with things that are factual and, like laws, policies, and from there I can kind of look up different interpretations of these policies, and that's when I'm connected to other comparisons and can make these larger connections, like the one about the CEOs, that would have been something that's not really kind of projected out to the public, but upon research can be found. And that was hard. Yeah, that one was definitely hard. But there were still enough resources to find everything. And a lot, were presented through the state. And then, yeah, backpedaling from there, comparing them to old laws and policies, and it was a lot. It was definitely tough research, but I would go and collect all these things, write them down. I've gone through 3 sketchbooks this semester, and then I would kind of compile them loosely until I had this idea of what it was I was looking at. And then from there, that's when I would kind of mold together these graphics trying to present those ideas.
I just have a follow-up question. I'm thinking, thanks. I'm also thinking of, Rachel Wallace is an artist in Chicago who did a quilt about predominantly Black folks who have been executed by Chicago police. And for a while, the quilt was the repository of data that was so hard to find. It's not the case anymore. And so I guess what I wanted to ask you about is, the educational function and awareness raising function of your work, if you see that as part of what you're trying to do as well.
Yes, yes, I definitely think the more I make my work, the more I do feel that I I am trying to involve people and educate in some way or another. And I think that that's what kind of led me into this digital realm, was the accessibility of it. I know that like art is not, especially a one of piece, one and done, is not always going to be something that everyone can learn from, whereas these digital works can. And then hopefully, creating those in a way that works. But I think that's what actually kind of motivated me to get into that, was I wanted to make these more accessible and, yes, more involving and educational.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, good. Great to see
Great
your
to
work
see
and the
you.
way in which things have developed. Really,
Thank
really
you.
big leaps and bounds from what we saw
Yes.
when you came in. So that's exciting to see you running with things.
Thank
So I appreciate you bringing up this point about accessibility. That was something I wanted to talk to you about. Your work is, although you're making technologized forms and you're making discrete objects, your work is so deeply social. Like it's incredibly, incredibly social. And what I'm also seeing is this commitment to understanding the personal as political through your own personal narrative. So I guess what I'm trying to maybe this isn't a question, but an interest in pushing you to discuss a little bit of the ways in which you see the social, your own personal narrative, and this impulse towards accessibility as core ethics of your practice, or just I would love to hear you just talk about that, because it's one of these things that I see running through everything that you've presented today.
Right, thank you. I think that it is actually, whenever I came to undergrad and I was trying to make these personal works, that's kind of what you feel the need to do as a young artist. All the ideas and the statistics I was trying to find would just lead me to these larger ideas that affected so many people. And that kind of pushed me to think more socially on every aspect of my own life. It was like, but how does this apply in the max level? So I guess that's how I kind of started to develop that need to describe what I'm going through or what I've experienced in a way that has impacted the mass, and a thing that is known by many. Did I answer that correctly? I'm sorry if I missed the second half. I'm trying to think. But yeah, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for your comments. And yeah, I definitely think that the social aspect of my work comes from my own personal experiences and trying to understand those. And that is kind of what I meant by like the embellishment of the statistic. It was like in finding these things, I was able to understand the world at mass, and that was the true education I was finding and the true education I was gaining from this experience in college. And that's also something that's not very accessible. So I think that that's what I mean by making these ideas accessible to others. It's like it shouldn't have to be learned throughout higher education. I wish that everyone could be able to gain this knowledge throughout digital realms. Like I feel like a lot of people are these days.
There seems to be something too about the democratic nature of working digitally and the democratic nature of textiles that also is a core element of the work. I don't know if you're familiar with the parallel histories of coding and textile making, but it may be something that looking into could help you build some larger discourses around the meaning of your work.
Yes, thank you so much. I think I've read a couple of pieces that discuss net and nets. So yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
We have plenty of time left in the hour, but I also know that many folks are kind of ping-ponging between meetings and crit panels as well, so I don't want to keep anyone here who must go. And Maggie, I'm sure you see the comments that some people left in the chat for you as well.
Yes.
I just want to say, Maggie, This is Gail. Congratulations
Thank you.
again. Your work is so many facets. It'll be so fascinating to see where it goes. But thinking of the marijuana issue, I found difficult to reconcile how you could make a bunch of changes in the law and still have so many people incarcerated. It just makes no sense to me. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand why that persists. So maybe you can figure that out.
Yeah, and I think that's what these pieces are trying to do, is this like a calling out almost of, yeah, these ideas are not meeting their projected masks, like, you know, the people that are in charge and saying these initiatives take place, that they just don't simply happen as fast as they should and in the ways that they should. But yeah, I think the more we discuss those things, the more we'll find those solutions, and hopefully we'll change that. Yeah.
Well done. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you, everyone. Maggie, I put something, she's an Indigenous Canadian sculptor, but she just had a show open at MoMA, and it sort of traces the history of tobacco and tobacco trade and sort of the money and how it's rooted in a lot of problems. So I don't know, maybe someone worth checking out.
Yes.
Thinking about Gail's comment and the marijuana and your practice. But I just want to thank everyone again for your time. Margaret, thank you so much for your fantastic presentation and sharing your work and research with us. Best of luck to everyone with the rest of Crit Week.
Thank you all. I appreciate everybody here today.
Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you, Gail, for being here, and Stephanie, Marissa.
Good to see y'all.